Okay, so I wrote this video like so long ago that I don't even I lost the thumbnail. I spent like 2 hours making this cool thumbnail in Photoshop. This was around the time like Death Island came out. I don't even know how long ago that was, but I have things to say to the Resident Evil fans, and here we go.
Ink Ribbon.
Plain and simple, the whole point of this video is I think Leon and Jill should be together. Now, I mean that in every possible way. They should be teammates, they could also be lovers, I don't care, but I'm going to list my reasons and plead my case to you, the people, and you can tell me whether you agree or not. I had actually waited until Death Island came out because that was the first official time that we got to see Leon and Jill actually meet and interact ever in the entire franchise. It's the only time so far. But apparently, there's a big rumor that's been going around for a while that Leon and Jill are going to be in something together. I don't know if it's going to be Resident Evil 9 or if it's going to be some other thing, but I wanted to make this video before that happens, especially now, because I want to be able to say, I told you, just in case it ends up being true. So shipping is a big thing in pretty much any fandom, and if you don't know what shipping is, it's short for relationshipping, and that's where you take this character and you're like, I want them to be together. And I don't think it necessarily needs to be romantic. I think it can be platonic. Random fun fact that I remember from way back, Allison Court had said on, it was either Twitter or an interview, but she ships Claire Redfield and Albert Wesker. And I'm like, and this was after Code Veronica when Wesker like slapped Claire around and threw her across the floor, and I'm like, oh, okay, I see what's going on here. I'm reading through my notes right now, and I had like I was gonna do animations, and I was gonna film this outside, and oh god, nobody has time for that right now. Okay, so here's one of the main points that I wanted to make, and I actually have eventually I'll do a whole video just on this. We have talked about how Resident Evil just does characters really well. They're well written, they're likable, like they shouldn't be as popular as they are, but like, you know, everyone thinks Leon is cool or attractive or both or whatever. Everyone loves like Jill and Chris. These characters are fantastic, and especially the female characters. Capcom has a secret sauce to how they write and portray their female characters, and it's very simple. And I talked about this a little bit when I did the George Romero video about his movie script, because it happened in that too. But basically, anytime, and you see this in so many movies too, anytime you take a woman and a man who are partnered together and they're on equal footing, and then it becomes a romantic thing, the woman always ends up taking a backseat to the man. The woman then becomes like the prize or the thing you have to protect or save or whatever. And unfortunately, that kind of like lowers them down a peg, which you don't want, especially if you're trying to do strong female characters, right? So in the George Romero script, there was a whole thing where Jill and Chris were actually together, like together. Like there was a sex scene and everything. And I hated that because, you know, think of like James Bond. You're always rooting for James Bond. You're like, yeah, like whatever, but you're never rooting for the Bond girl. Even if she's in an action scene and doing cool stuff, it's like okay, well, he still has to protect her and keep her from getting killed, you know, like that's just the mindset that the audience gets into. And in Resident Evil, they don't do that. There is always platonic, respectful relationships between all the characters. So for example, Jill and Chris never once in the entire series have any flirtation or whatever, because they have that mutual respect and it keeps them equals. Same thing with Claire and Leon. They are equals across the board, even though there's the joke about like Claire having a crush on Leon and he's like either oblivious to it or doesn't care. Plus there's the whole Ada thing, which I'll get to in a second. But you know, Claire and Leon have that mutual respect. They're on the same level. Now you might be saying, well, what about Ada and Leon, because they have a thing? But here's how Capcom played that really, really well. So Ada and Leon are written in a way that the power dynamics of the relationship are still on equal footing, because Ada holds power over Leon by being like mysterious and sometimes bad, and she's like hard to figure out, and he he likes her, but he's like, why are you doing this? And it gets them all confused. Meanwhile, Leon has power over Ada because he's a good boy, and he makes her stop and look at herself in the mirror and question what she's doing. And then that forces Ada to really internalize and be like, whatever. And I think Leon is the reason that Ada didn't become a villain. I think he kept her grounded and centered. Oh my god, I'm getting goosebumps. I'm such a fucking nerd over this. Oh my god. But you know what I'm saying, right? Like, I think Leon keeps Ada in check, and she kind of likes that because it brings out her good side. And I don't know, it's a really interesting dynamic with Ada and Leon, and it's this cat and mouse thing that you just, it's never gonna end, and it's weird and it's sexy and it's frustrating, and I don't know, it's great as a player and an audience member watching it. You're like, oh my god. Like, sometimes I step out of myself and I'm like, these people aren't real, they're fictional characters, but I'm like, but you guys get it, so I don't have to explain myself. This is a safe space for people on this level of video game nerds. But anyway, now I'm just gonna do a quick bullet points of things that they have in common that just further prove my point that Leon and Jill work together. They both have the same haircut. They both wear blue. They're both cops. They both wear big-ass shoulder pads, at least in the original outfits. They both have a strong sense of justice. Both are kind but strict. Both have changed pretty drastically since their introductions. Both of them have had to deal with BOWs, including a big-ass tyrant type, where Leon had Mr. X and Jill had the Nemesis. I mean, think of the bonding conversations on that alone. Both of them were infected and almost succumbed to viruses. Jill was infected with the T-virus. Leon was infected with Las Plagas. We already know they're both capable of respectful platonic relationships. Leon with Claire and Jill with Chris. So we don't have to worry about that. They've proven themselves. Leon and Jill have both been betrayed by people they trusted. Leon was betrayed by Ada and the government, and even Claire, I would say, like in the ending of, like in the epilogue of Resident Evil 3, where Claire is just like, all right, Leon and Sherry, peace, and she just takes off, and it's like, what the hell? And he had to take care of Sherry, and it's like, what the hell, Claire? And then there's also the whole thing with Chief Irons, which I think Chief Irons betrayed both Leon and Jill in different ways. Of course, Wesker was in Resident Evil 4, but he didn't really betray Leon. He kind of just was there. Whatever. And then of course Nikolai. Although Jill, I don't think that's that big of a trail, because Jill knew Nikolai was evil immediately. Like, she sniffed him out right away because she's smart. Another reason why she would be good with Leon, because he's dumb and he trusts everyone because he's a good boy. And Jill would be like, I don't know about this. And of course, both of them are extremely skilled in combat. So them fighting BOWs together or whatever would be awesome. Now, just for fun, let's keep the bullet points going, but just shorter ones. Now I want to just compare Leon to Chris. Because some of you might be saying, well, no, Jill and Chris have a history. They should be in another game together because they've always been partners. Okay, let's look at it. Chris is a lot more stoic and hyper-focused than Leon. Like, he's very, like, by the book, we're going to do the mission, and he gets very serious. Whereas Leon operates, I think, more emotionally and focuses on what's right, even if it's not something that he should be doing because it was like an order given or whatever. He would still step back and be like, no, this is not okay. Whereas Chris would just be like, Chris is more about strength, Leon is more about agility, and that's where probably it'd be better for Chris to be paired with Jill, because as we know, Jill is very agile. And of course, Chris has his experiences with Jill. They have a history. So the mansion incident, the events of Resident Evil 5 when he thought Jill was killed. So he does have a deep connection to Jill. But Chris also is Claire's brother, and Claire and Leon are friends, which means that Chris and Leon would get along, although they didn't really get along in Resident Evil 6. But God, there's so much to remember that happens in this franchise. Okay, so let's flip it around. What about Ada? Because a lot of you are probably like, no, Leon and Ada could be in a game together, which I actually love that idea too. But compared to Jill, like Leon, Jill does have a strong sense of justice. She stands up for what she believes in, and she really, she does what's right. Ada, however, tends to pick and choose what she thinks is right and wrong, or what is the appropriate situation. So I've said it before, but in case you don't know, in writing, there's different types of characters, and Ada is my favorite type of character in any story. She's called the jokester character, and that's the character that you don't know if they're good or evil, or what their intentions are. And what makes characters like that so interesting is you don't know what they're thinking or what they're doing, and it's very engaging. However, Ada does have a reputation for betraying people. I mean, like, the whole thing with her boyfriend John, which I don't even know if that's canon anymore, but she didn't really seem to care about him. You know, Ben gets ripped open and she's like, oh well, let's get out of here. So there's that. Where Jill has much more, I think, a reputation of loyalty. Like, she really stands by people, and when she loses a teammate, she feels it. And even when people are nasty to her, like, think of her and Dario. He's like screaming at her, like, I'm not gonna go with you, nah, nah, nah. And she's like, I understand, I'm so sorry, but we have to get out of here. And he's like, no. Like, that's someone acting responsibly and doing what's right, as opposed to just, someone with, I think, less emotional intelligence than Jill in that situation would have been like, fine, lock yourself in the box, see if I care. She tried to communicate and he was just not having it, but at least she tried. Ada probably would have just shot him in the leg and Spider-Man'd away. No, she wouldn't do that. She'd just leave. Actually, she probably wouldn't even, like, talk to him in the first place. She'd just be like, I'm mysterious and sexy, and walk out the door. And then the biggest, like, difference between Ada and Jill is that Ada has tried to steal and sell multiple viruses. Meanwhile, Jill is trying to save people and stop the viruses. So I think just on that alone, I have a case here. So I also thought it was important to ask a big question here. Have Leon and Jill actually met? Now, obviously, I know that they've met in I know they've met in the Death Island movie, but that takes place in 2015, which is 2 years after Resident Evil 6 and 1 year after Resident Evil 7, because don't forget, Chris was in that one too. They technically appear together in Dead by Daylight, but that's not canon. According to some people on Reddit, there's a very brief mention in the S.D. Perry novels that Leon and Jill met, but I searched through them. I have the PDFs. I was control Fing and going through it, trying to find it, because I didn't remember that and I couldn't find it. So if that is true, you guys can let me know in the comments if you've read those books. Other than that, from what I could find, it's really hard to say if Jill and Leon have actually met. They probably know each other, or at least know about each other through Chris and Claire and, all that stuff. But I think all of that just kind of happened off camera. Like, I don't know if you guys think this far into it as I do, but I imagine, like, when there's, like, no outbreaks, there's no whatever, like, Chris and Jill and Leon and Claire and whoever else all come over for, like, a cookout and some beer to, like, stress relief and just hang out with each other. And, because when you have a bond like that, when you survive traumatic stuff, it creates friendships. And that's where I imagine that Leon and Jill have met, especially the way they meet in Dead Island. It's very clear that they've met before because, she's like, oh, Leon. He's like, Jill. And then, they have each other's back immediately, which was really, really nice to see. But officially, it's never been mentioned, unfortunately. I would love to know, like, what it was like when those two met for the first time and what kind of conversations they had. Like, I'm going on a tangent right here, but I really imagine, like, when after Resident Evil 2, whenever Leon and Chris meet, and then Chris finds out, oh, you're Leon, you're the one who helped my sister in Raccoon City and protected her, and they just have, like, a big, like, Metal Gear Solid 2 bro hug. That's what I picture. But I don't know. We were never told. See, if there was a TV series of Resident Evil, this is what I would want to see. All these little things, like, just normal, like, oh, okay, I need to calm down. Some people in the comments in the past have, like, I've even gotten DMs from some of you guys being like, oh, could you tell Capcom to, like, do this? Or can you ask Capcom when the next whatever's coming? I'm like, I'm not at Capcom. I don't know people at Capcom. I don't have that power because, trust me, if I had that power, I'd be using it. I'd be calling up Sharon at Capcom and be like, hey, girl, what you doing? Hey, so for Resident Evil 9, do you think we could put Leon and Jill together? Yeah? Oh, also, Resident Evil 3 Remake, just get rid of the clock tower section. The fans won't miss that. No one will care. It'll be fine. No, if I could tell Capcom what the fans want, even, like, genuinely, as a consultant for like speaking on behalf of the fans, I totally would. And I'm starting to think that long running franchises need that, because a lot of them just, they'll change something so drastically or go off the rails, and all the fans are like horrified, like we didn't want this. And I think it's because you have so many new developers coming in who maybe didn't even play the originals, so they don't have the connection to it that we do. That should be a position. I would literally do it for free. Capcom, call me. I will make sure that everything is going well. Oh, but that would be hard, because then I couldn't tell you guys anything that I know, and I'd be like, oh. Anyway, yeah, that's why I tell you guys whenever Capcom's doing like surveys or any of that stuff, because you are the ones who have to tell Capcom. You're the fans. But if I could design the next Resident Evil game, I think I'd want to do a system similar to 2, where you could play as like either Claire or Leon and have different scenarios, except there would be like maybe more of an emphasis on teamwork. Maybe something like Resident Evil 0, where you could work together. Especially think of co-op. Imagine if Resident Evil had online co-op. So one of you is Rebecca and one of you is Billy, and you just go and you do your own thing, and then you know meet up. I think that could make for a really engaging survival horror experience, especially with a friend. And then like imagine you get bitten and you're like, you have to push a button to radio your friend, you know. And what'd be even cooler if it was voice checks. You'd be like, I'm in whatever room, please come help me, there's like 4 lickers in here, and you gotta run and go save your friend. That's cool. Although, before you get angry, I am a single player guy. I don't play any games online. I don't like, yeah, but the idea is cool, okay, theoretically. So I have no idea, just to be very clear and open with you guys, I have no idea what the next Resident Evil games are going to be. I know it's been confirmed that there is a remake in development. We don't know which one. It could be Code Veronica. It could be Resident Evil 1 remake. I don't think it's Resident Evil 5. Some people have also said it's Resident Evil 0. I don't know. The only thing I know is there is a confirmed remake in development, and whatever Resident Evil 9 is going to be. I don't know what they're going to call it. It might not be 9. It might have some different name. I don't know. I don't know anything else. I've seen the rumors, but I don't deal in rumors. I need concrete proof, because a lot of these rumors sometimes are operating on outdated information from like canceled builds of games. Sometimes they're just rumors and there's nothing to them. And sometimes they're completely correct, but you never know. And I'm never going to provide you guys with false information. So I will only ever do that if I like have concrete proof and I'm allowed to talk about it. The only thing I can't figure out is if they're doing a new Resident Evil game, where the hell is the story going to go? Because Village, like Resident Evil 7 was already like an outreaching thing, and then Village just was like a whole different thing. But Capcom did say that that's it for the Ethan storyline. So I think we're going to come back and do something else. I would honestly just love another Resident Evil game in the style of like Resident Evil 2 Remake, where, you know, maybe a new game, but it plays like Resident Evil 2 Remake. I'd be perfectly happy with that. I think they figured out the formula. It's fun. It's amazing. But I don't know. I'm just a Resident Evil fan sitting in front of other Resident Evil fans talking way too much about fictional characters than anyone ever should. And last question. Jill and Leon as a couple name. I don't know if it works, because Gion, Leal, Kennedy-Alentine, Valinity. It just doesn't work. Like no combination works. So maybe that's the universe being like, no. Or maybe that's like they are not a couple. It'll never work. So you've heard me talk about all my ideas and ramble on, but what about you guys? Because I know a lot of you have your own ideas for what the next Resident Evil game could be, or the next like Resident Evil TV show or movie or whatever. I'm sure you guys have your own passionate ideas of what those could be, and I would love to hear them in the comments. So we can all nerd out together. It's okay. No one's gonna judge you here. All right, I am gonna go get a coffee because I am sleepy. So until next time, I'm Kai Morgan, and as always, thanks for watching Ink Ribbon.